I'd like you to take a look at the books behind me on the shelves. There's all sorts of information and knowledge there that you could learn. You could pick up any one of those books and learn about any topic on any of them that you wanted. It's up to you. Now imagine that those same books are there, all behind you, full of information you wanted to learn, but you are not able to access that information because you do not have an education. I know a lot of times we complain about going to school, we complain about work, and we complain but imagine a life without education, a life without opportunity. When the former slaves were freed, they knew that education was important, and they knew it was important because education had been denied to them. It was illegal to teach them to read and write because with it came power and the ability to form and shape their own destiny. So in order to be what we called upwardly mobile, to help better themselves, they have to be able to have access to an education. Having access to an education is one of the things that the Freedmen's Bureau helped establish. The Freedmen's Bureau would help to find buildings for schools. They would help get materials for schools. I don't believe they paid for teachers, but they would help transport teachers. Okay, teachers from northern missionaries would come down, mostly women, to teach in the schools. Former slaves would teach in the schools, and even some southern whites would teach in the schools as well to help educate the former slaves. Interestingly enough, about 1/3 of the schools, one third of the attendants of a lot of these schools were adults. Some schools had people who ranged in age all the way from a young child to, a 29-year-old adult, because they had not had an education. You had lots of parents learning alongside their children, or they started establishing night classes or Saturday classes in order to help meet the need for adults who need an education too. And you can imagine how important an education is. If you're going to go into business, or if you're going to sign a contract, even sign a contract to work on a job, you need to be able to read it so that you know what you're signing, so that people don't trick you, or you don't, mistakenly sign something that is going to cheat you out of your wages or your money or whatever the case may be. Something as simple as telling time. If you are used to living your own life by bells being rung on a plantation or overseers yelling at you to get up, and you work from sun up to sundown, and now you got to find a job, you've got to be able to know when to get there, when the job ends, like just simple things that we completely take for granted. Counting money. You're going to get paid, you want to make sure you get paid the right amount. You want to make sure you're not getting cheated. You've got to pay bills now. You have to collect money from your employer. These are all really important skills that children don't just need to learn growing up, but the adults need to learn as well. And the thing that's interesting about it too is it kind of sets up a separate education system in the South, because these freedmen schools are full of former slaves. So they're literally schools full of former slaves separate from the white population. And the thing about the South, though, is that they didn't really have an education system, a public education system. So sometimes they would sponsor or give scholarships to poor whites to attend private schools, but there was no public education, free education system set up like there was in the North, where everybody had the ability to go to a school. So there were even a lot of white children who were poor and uneducated as well living in the South. But it's kind of the interesting thing about this is it sets up a separate education system. And there's not a lot of monetary support for it. A lot of Black Southerners will raise the money and try to get the funds to support these schools. But especially once the Freedmen's Bureau closes, they are not widely supported, if at all, by the Southern governments, and they kind of have to struggle along, and with huge class sizes, with not so great buildings, with not good materials, and this is kind of starts the whole separation of black and white education. That's going to be a problem for a long time. But anyway, what you're going to do today is you're going to go ahead and learn a little bit about the Freedmen's Bureau and what it did for the freed slaves in the South, in regards to helping them with jobs and with education.